What's up, everyone? This is Big Poner. I'm going to be doing a few videos answering some questions asked by Pan Patties from the YouTube. The reason why I'm doing videos is the same reason why I originally started doing YouTube, making YouTube videos. It was mainly just for a convenience for myself. I like to help other players, and the thing that I was finding increasingly more and more was I was getting asked the same questions by multiple people. Sometimes even people would need me to re-explain things. This way, when I explain it one time. It would have taken me time to explain all those questions to Pan Patty, and then someone else is gonna have that question inevitably. Because if you have a question, you ain't the only one. Everyone starts off um, not knowing anything when they start a new game, and as you progress, you learn more stuff. And by finding a source of information, you can learn a lot more really fast, and you can jump in your skill in the game, and or at least be in the right direction and know that something's going to work. So the first question that I'm going to be answering, and I'm only going to do one question at a time because some people might only be interested in one of these questions and not the other stuff. This question is about gear. The question was how often to upgrade gear and how do I recognize when my investment is worth it? For example, 5 exalted orbs for gloves gives me 5% more damage. I'm going to start from the very beginning, because this information is going to help you in the future. Everyone, unless you quit the game, you're going to make another character. I'm going to start with Axe. Thing is, with Axe, when do I upgrade my gear? I don't. If it's my first character, a season starter, if you look back at my videos, you'll see my gear is absolute shit. Unless I get really lucky and something good drops for me, I don't have nothing. And I have notoriously bad season starts. I was in red maps using my 4 links that are guaranteed um, through quests in the axe, um, which, you know, in the beginning, why is it that I would continue to wearing garbage gear and I wouldn't be going out and trying to buy stuff? The reason why, as long as I can still play and I can continue advancing, I'm not going to waste time to upgrade. Why is that? In early levels, your level advances, and gear that you had access to is going to become garbage. So until you get to a certain point, investing in gear is not worthwhile at all. When you get to a point where you're doing maps and stuff like that, that's when you want to start upgrading. In the beginning, obviously, you want to get the biggest upgrades that you can possibly get, that are going to give you the largest increase to your build for your investment. This is pretty easy to think about. If upgrading my gloves for whatever amount of currency only gives me 5%, and upgrading my weapon gives me 50% more damage, obviously I'm going to upgrade my weapon. And that also prioritizes what you should be looking to upgrade. If I'm severely lacking HP, then I'm going to look at my items and be like, I could get more HP on this item, I could get a lot more HP. And I don't have a lot of requirements on things that I have to have on this item, so I'm going to try and upgrade that item. Same thing with damage. If I could get more damage on my rings, and one of my rings doesn't have stats that I have to have, or maybe there's only a couple stats on there that I have to have, like I want HP and I need one resistance to have my resistances right, and I would like more damage, then I should probably upgrade that ring. In the beginning, you just want to basically constantly be getting upgrades so your build stronger, so you can do harder content, so you can get better loot, so then you can basically like snowball and get to a place where, like let's say the base starting place it is this build, for instance, with all of the gear that I recommended. So if that is the goal, once you get to that point, where's that you go? You don't want to be upgrading the main items of the build. What are the main items of the build? For this is an example. The bow. I told you guys in the video, um, in the guide video, like the only upgrade from this item is going to be like a mirror to your weapon. Um, the reason why is because this offers so much. It gives us the extra projectiles. It has a base 400. You can get a base damage of it to 400, which is a very significant amount of damage. And then it also adds, 30% more attack speed, 30% increased movement speed, 30% more damage every alternating 8 seconds. So, you could cut that over time in a damage projection in half, but still that's a significant factor. So it makes the only upgrades that we can get be a really big upgrade. So obviously that's not going to be your focus until all of the rest of your gear is is really good. And even at that point, um, eh, you would have to upgrade other pieces of gear because you have to think this adds two additional arrows. So like I have upgraded, and what did I have to do? I had to add more projectiles somewhere else. So it wasn't just upgrading on a really big purchase, it was also having to get a really nice item of another item. So another, well, that wasn't really a big purchase, like 5x salts. Um, but the thing is if you have a really weak piece of gear, you want to upgrade that first. If you get to a place where your only upgrades are a 5% increase on your gloves for 5 exalts, the thing that I would say at that point is there a bigger upgrade that you could save for that would give you a larger increase in 5%? Because if you're at the point where you can only get where your best upgrade is a 5% upgrade on your gloves, you're getting to a point where you should start thinking about saving for really big upgrades. Am I going to say save a mirror, or you could probably get an upgrade for like 50 60 exalts at some point in this league. um, as more stuff comes in, people are swapping builds, they sell their old stuff. I don't do that, but a lot of people do. um, there becomes chances to get really good stuff for less as like prices go down as the season goes on. But there are certain items that will never drop in price. In fact, sometimes they go up. But there are other options, and I'm going to give you guys a lot of options because I will video me crafting gear. Obviously, every different craft is going to be a different cost, and then there's also risk involved in those things. But if you're at a place where your only upgrade is a 5% increased damage on your gloves, you're probably at a place in your build where you're going to want to start doing things like crafting a belt like this, which previously, um, to get something like what I have right here, and not this nice of rolls, just a decent one, um, would probably cost you like 20, 30 exalts, um, which now you know how to make the influences on the items, and then you can, invest currency as you get it to try and get, a really nice one. Um, eh, Realistically, for small investment, you won't wind up with something this nice. This is a mere this is a mere value item. Um, but you will probably be able to, for it costs you 3 exalts to make the belt, and then you're gonna roll it with fossils, or you can scour out, spam it till you get something nice. Um, that is realistic because if you have 5 exalts, you could make the belt for 3. You could take those 2 exalts and try to see if you can get something that's in your range of goals, and that's going to be a larger upgrade than a 5% increase of damage on your gloves. The thing is, when you reach a point like this where the only upgrades you can get are small increases, without doing something like crafting a really high tier item, what I do is I have a filler spot. And why is that? Because when I'm crafting something, the thing is a lot of these really high tier upgrades you can't buy. There's not very many of them. There's not very many of them in the game, and the ones that are in the game are super, super expensive. So for myself, I find it, I find it more satisfying, for one, um, For like cool stuff like this, I would rather craft it than buy it. But sometimes I regret that because, when you have an item that winds up being like a super pain and you dump tons of currency and it takes you like 3 days to craft it, um, if I could have bought if I could have bought an item that fit that slot, there were definitely a lot of times that I was like, man, I wish I could have just bought something. But you have to consider the craft and what it is that you're shooting for, and that's why a fill slot is a good thing to have. And what is that? It's basically where I get all of the stuff that I need. Like, I needed fire resistance and I needed lightning resistance. I need a lot of HP. Obviously, I wasn't prioritizing damage or anything like that because, the worst stat on this is the damage stats. Tier 4 cold damage, 1 to 2 cold damage. Obviously, that ain't doing nothing for me. But what are my resistances are terrible without these gloves, and when I put them on, my resistances are perfect. And what happens to my HP? These are giving me 300 HP. I mean, it's a good filler slot, and these aren't super expensive gloves. These are definitely probably my cheapest item. Yeah, like an exalt and a half. Um, and having a slot where you have flexibility like that makes it so that something like this is a lot easier to do. Because say I had, you know, say my resistances were perfect the way my build was, and I had a different set of gloves, and I roll this crazy good item, like you get lucky and you're crafting, you hit some crazy item, but now your fire resistance or your lightning resistance is messed up. Am I going to be like, I ain't going to use this because I need fire resistance, so I'm just going to not use this super crazy good item? Hell no. You're going to be like, what's my worst piece of gear? I'm going to use this piece of gear. I'm going to buy a cheap one that makes my build work because this thing's adding way more damage, way more HP, way more everything, to my build than what I would get by having one extra stat on this item being a good damage roll, right? Um, yeah. So that's kind of that's kind of the way that I progress my build into a like super min max state, and you can use that same kind of method, to do that. The thing I will say is you can do cheap crafting, which, where you wind up with really strong items for a low investment, which is like this. Like I did a video on how to make this. If you haven't made one of these, this is an excellent option, and I have spent so much currency trying to get an upgrade that's better than this. I am going to do a craft video on how to get the new influence version of an item that is even better. With knowledge that I have gained from messing around a lot. And I've figured out the best method to now create the new influence item, and I will make a video on that. So I'm going to give you guys a lot of crafting methods that you guys will be able to use when you can't find the gear that you need. But the thing that I will say is when you can buy a piece of gear, the nice thing about buying a piece of gear, I do buy gear. Um, the thing is a lot of times I can't find the stuff that I need. But buying gear is guaranteed. I know I'm going to get that. It's not a risk. It's not I invest a bunch of currency and I have nothing to show for it, which this thing took me 3 days to craft. As I see just tons and tons of currency go in and I have nothing to show, that hurts and it's very demoralizing. And that's, if you want to craft, if eventually you want to try to craft something like that, that's something you have to take into account. It's definitely not for everyone, but not all crafts are like this. This is a really hard to hit craft, um, because I wanted very very specific things, and those were the only things that I was willing to accept, and that's why it was such an expensive craft. Um, but when you have some leniency, it makes it a lot easier. I ain't like being like I want these 5 exact things, all high tier, the probability of that happening is really, 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 really bad. Being like, I want these two things and anything else that's good and will work for my build, that's way easier to hit. And what makes it so that we can craft like that? Having a slot that we can use as a filler. The weapon isn't something that I can be like, I just want two of those stats, and the rest of the stuff can just be whatever that's good. That doesn't work out because if I did that, there would be no point in me even crafting one because it ain't going to be better than this. It had to be really good to be better than this because I'm giving up a lot by switching off of this. So that's the types of things that you have to understand. That's the types of things you have to consider. Going back once again to the 5% better for 5 exalts. In general, I'd say no. Um, eh, if it's an actual 5% increase to damage, definitely, because an actual 5% increase to your damage is like really big in the grand scheme of things. Like, if I were to get an actual 5% increase to my damage, um, from all of my items, we'd have what, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% increase in my damage. I'd be adding like, over a million base damage. Like that would be absolutely huge. Um, so if hypothetically on these gloves, I could keep all of the stats that are good for me and I could get rid of that cold damage and get something on it that would give me a 5% increase in my damage. So everything else is stuff I need, and I'm getting a 5% increase in my damage. Would I spend 5 exalts? In a second. Like, like that. I'd be like, give it to me right now. Give me it. Give me it. um, but it's all, I mean, that's very hypothetical to this situation because that's assuming it has all of the other things that I need. um, and finding items like that that fit everything that you need are not easy to find. Being really good, and when you can find those items, they are worth buying because it makes your build stronger. So it's really, really, really situational, but in general, you want to be upgrading. Um, and I've told you guys it's for efficiency, and you'll be able to earn more currency because you'll be able to play more efficiently. That's 100% true. You know what's also true? It's a lot more fun to play with a really strong build than it is to play with a weak one. And I don't think anyone's going to argue with me on that because I've played with shitty builds. When I was new, I played a bunch of shitty builds because I did like you guys. I went out to get information, and unfortunately, I got a lot of bad information. And I kept throwing currency at the build, and the build still sucked. The reason why I recommended this build is because it scales really well. It's good from the beginning, and if you want to do something super crazy with it like me, it's still really good to min-max. And how is it that I knew that that was going to happen, and why didn't I go with other things? There are other things this season that are going to be really good, and when I start doing other builds, you will see that, but not for a season starter. You don't take risks on a season starter. And that's what I think a lot of people fail to realize is when there's a bunch of unknowns, I ain't risking it with an unknown. I won't start a new skill gem. Like this skill gem is the same as it was last season. They just buffed it. Something like they've completely reworked it. That shit's a hell no. I ain't starting that because it might not work or it might really suck. And do I want to level up a character and start using a build that might really suck or might or might not work? Hell no. Because then I'm gonna be doing all those upgrades and spending my 5 exalts to get a 5% increase, and the build's still gonna suck. Anyways, um, I hope that this gives you guys some like this is a really hard subject, and I hope that I made it clear and gave you guys some direction. Um, but I honestly don't. It's so situational based on like where you're at. That's why I tried to give you guys some examples. And I've reshot this because like I really don't. Um, there's so much stuff to consider, and I've made this video a couple times like way too long, and felt like I was just dragging it out. But it's kind of it's just so situational. Just stick to the things stick to the things that I've told you, which are, you do want to be upgrading, and make sure you're upgrading your weakest thing first, and always be, if you can get, save up for a big upgrade that you won't have to replace, that's another really good idea. Because if you can get those items that you don't have to replace, then it gives you one less thing to worry about or have to upgrade in the future, and then you can really focus on those other items. Um, and the end goal is, I mean, if you do think you're never going to have to replace it, and then you get to the point where all of your other gear has become so good that you are replacing it, I mean, that's a pretty sweet spot to be at. So, anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Peace.